This is Ernest Hemingway.
De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarín. De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarín. De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarín. El cariño que te tengo no te lo puedo negar. Se me sale la babita, yo no lo puedo evitar. Cuando Juanita y Chan Chan en el mar servían arena, como sacudí el jibe, a Chan Chan le daba pena. Limpia el camino de paz, que yo me quiero sentar en aquel tronco que veo y así no puedo llegar. De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarín. De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarín. De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarín.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this new episode of our favorite show. And today we would talk about a famous writer that is Hemingway. Ernest Miller Hemingway was born on July 21st, 1899 in Oak Park near Chicago, Illinois. He was a child of a middle American middle-class family. His father was a doctor, and his early life and adolescence were characterized by hunting trips in the mountains with his father, fishing on the lake, and rambling in the forest. He was a keen sportsman too, and he particularly enjoyed boxing, which is a sport that he practiced all his life. At school, he was a proficient student, and he realized that he had a talent for writing. He did not attend university, choosing instead, at the age of 18, just begin working as a junior reporter on the Kansas Star, which was a newspaper. With the outbreak of the First World War, Hemingway joined the army as a volunteer and went to Italy, where he worked for the ambulance brigade on the Italian front. He was wounded in action, and he was decorated twice for his service. This experience of Italy and of the war formed part of his novel Farewell to Arms, which was published in 1929. This experience of war was to affect Hemingway deeply. exciting him with the heroism and action involved in armed struggle, and yet shocking him with the reality of death and bloodshed. After the war, he returned home, but he found that he could not settle down to his old life. So he moved to Chicago and began writing more seriously. He published some of his works in newspapers and magazines. And then he met the American writer Sherwood Anderson, who was to play a large part in forming Hemingway's style and convincing him also to write as his job. Hemingway married Hadley Richardson in 1921, and the young couple moved to Paris. In Paris, Hemingway was working as a correspondent for the newspaper Toronto Star. Paris in the 20s was the center of culture life, and many Americans also were there.
Romantic sponges, they say, do it. Oysters down in Oyster Bay, do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love.
In the 20s, also, Paris was reveling in the jazz age. There were parties, dances, wide clubs and cabarets. But more importantly, for a young writer, there were many exciting new moments and trends, all based in Paris. For example, the Cubism of Braque and Picasso, the painting of Cézanne, the poetry of Ezra Pound and Eliot, T.S. Eliot, who was American too, and Pound as well. The prose of Joyce, all this was setting new standards in the arts, and Hemingway happily moved into this atmosphere of artistic stimulation. Later in his life, his last work will be A Movable Feast, where he tells all his adventures and his feelings about living in Paris.
Isn't this little Parisian dream a movable feast?
He became a habitué of the famous Harris Bar, and also of the Gertrude Stein celebrated salon. And there he was meeting many of the most important artists and writers in Paris. It was particularly influenced by Pound, whose insistence upon linguistic simplicity fascinated him a lot. His novels from this period include The Sun Also Rises in 1926 and a collection of short stories called Men Without Women in 1927. Apart from his creative writing, he was still working as a correspondent, sending articles back to the States on the Greek-Turkish War and Mussolini, and among other things, also in 1923 he visited Spain for the first time and he fell in love with this country. He developed an immediate and lasting interest in bullfighting, the corrida, which he described in his novel Death in the Afternoon in 1932. In 1928, he returned to the States and went to live in Key West in Florida. He divorced his first wife and married a rich American woman, Pauline Pfeiffer, that he met first in Paris. His reputation as a writer was growing, and his novel The Sun Also Rises sold very well. Also, Farewell to Arms sold more than 30,000 copies in only 3 weeks. In 1933, he set out again on his adventures, this time going to Africa to take part of a hunting safari, especially in Kenya, to hunt the black rhinoceros. His experience in Africa formed part of several novels, including The Green Hill of Africa in 1935. In 1936, with the Spanish Civil War making news all over the world, Hemingway, as he was a foreign correspondent, set off for Spain. He stayed in a luxury hotel in Madrid, where he held court over all new arrivals, journalists and foreign correspondents. Everybody was going there. He saw very little active service, but wrote reports on all the major events of the war, including the German bombing of Guernica, that probably you know also through the famous painting of Picasso. The novel For Whom the Bell Tolls, written in 1940, reflects the experience of this tragic war. And while it was an enormously popular book and then also a film, it has been criticized for its political analysis of the situation in Spain.
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
I don't know how to kiss or I would kiss you. Where do the noses go?
The compelling and heart-rendering story of two unlikely people who live a lifetime of love and courage in 4 momentous days. Starring the legendary Gary Cooper as Robert Jordan, an American sent on a deadly mission to blow up a strategic bridge in wartime Spain.
I try to make it in 6 hours, 7 at the most. Remember, the attack is set for sunrise.
Also starring Ingrid Bergman as Maria, a beautiful Spanish orphan girl with a tormented past.
My father cried out very loud, "Long live the Republic." And then they shot me.
And Katina Paxanou in her powerful Academy Award-winning performance as the outspoken but warm-hearted Pilar.
Do you know what it is to be ugly all your life? And to feel in here that you are beautiful.
You are beautiful.
Try to use your head and not your heart and listen.
Ernest Hemingway's world-renowned novel is transformed into one of the most passionate and powerful stories ever to grace the screen.
Also in 1940, having divorced from his second wife, he married a journalist he met in Spain, and the couple moved to Cuba. In Cuba, Hemingway spent a lot of time fishing, fishing marlin especially, and this experience later appeared in his novel The Old Man and the Sea. He set off again as a foreign correspondent, moving to London this time, and reporting on, among other things, the D-Day landing in Normandy during the Second World War. After the war, he divorced for the 3rd time, and then he married for the 4th time. The couple traveled extensively in Europe and again in Africa. But Hemingway's health was bad again because he suffered from uncontrollable alcoholism and also long periods of depression. Hemingway always drank a lot, and don't forget that if cocktails like the daiquiri of the mojito began popular because of Hemingway when he was in Cuba. There was a famous sentence that he said. There was a mi mojito en la bodeguita, mi daiquiri en el floridita. It was there were two bars of Cuba that they are still existing today, and that Hemingway was a good client, and he always drank a lot. So anyway, even if he had this depression and alcoholism problems, in 1950 he published Across the River and Into the Trees. This was a novel set during the Second World War. This novel was a critical and popular disaster. However, the novel The Old Man and the Sea, written in 1952, was a very big success. And thanks to this novel, Hemingway won the prestigious Pulitzer Prize. And then also in 1954, it was awarded of the Nobel Prize for his contribution to literature. Unfortunately, because of his health, he could not go to take the prize, but he accepted it. In 1959, he moved to Idaho, and it seemed that this period was one period of long depression. So hard for him that in 1960, on the 2nd of July, he shot himself with his own hunting gun.
No subject is terrible if the story is true, if the prose is clean and honest, and if it affirms courage and grace under pressure.
The so-called Jazz Age in the 20s saw writers such as Fitzgerald or Hemingway situating their novels in foreign countries. With a Central American protagonist that was responding to new situation. This tradition was certainly not new to American literature. Henry James had characterized the idea of the American abroad in novels such as Daisy Miller or A Portrait of a Lady. Anyway, in this time, many American artists were living abroad, like we said before, T.S. Eliot or Ezra Pound, and also Gertrude Stein. And the attraction of Europe was still high for American artists. The novels in which Americans find themselves in a foreign country was seen as a stimulating and interesting beginning for a plot. And it also contained the tradition of the outsider novel, because the American, as is a non-European, comes face to face with a new and different culture.
Hemingway.
Hemingway?
You liked my book?
Liked? I loved all your work.
Yes, it was a good book because it was an honest book. And that's what war does to men. And there's nothing fine and noble about dying in the mud, unless you die gracefully. And then it's not only noble, but brave.
Hemingway protagonists are always strong and brave men. So I must say that in more modern times, Hemingway's portrayal of his male heroes has been attacked. not only by feminists but also by literary critics that they were searching for a profounder analysis of the characters. Yet, when his novels were first published, the Hemingway hero, or as he was calling him, the aficionado, became a cult hero. And it was copied by many artists and other writers, also supplying a literary role model that was not existing anymore since the Byronic hero. The main character, so the protagonist, is often a warrior hunter figure, masculine and strong, who experiences pleasure and pain, exaltation and depression in equal strong measure. The heroes are always committed to some cause or struggle for which they are prepared to risk themselves. He is often an emblematic hero, defeated or wounded in some way by the life forces against which he battles. The Hemingway hero can be characterized by his view of existence as a battle, a contest, or a game, in which, in order to prove himself as a true man, a true aficionado, he must conquer and win in order to survive.